brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys.
Welcome to Sips, Suds, and Smokes. This is good old boy Mike, and joining me for this episode is good old boy Chris.
Gose.
Okay. All right. So listen, we have this episode coming up, Chris, and we've got to figure out how to say this beer that you've made for the GABF program correctly. And the correct pronunciation is in dispute, although we've both researched this, and I mean, I think it's Gose.
It's Gose. Gose, like...
I've called the Philadelphia Beer Authority. I've looked up the German Beer Society, and it says clearly on there, it says Rosea.
Oh, it's Gose. Like, you know, she goes to the beach. Goes.
No, we're not talking about how somebody goes anywhere. This is about a beer.
No, but it's an easy pronunciation. It's Gose.
If it's so easy, then why can't we get it right? We gotta get this right, man, because if our listeners don't know how to say this beer, they're gonna walk up to a bar and they're gonna go, I want a Gose, and see they'll get the right beer.
Well, it's Gose. So,
but there's not a bartender alive that would know what that would mean. But if they ask for Gose,
it's Gose.
They would get the right beer.
Right, it's Gose.
So I think we should say it correctly, which is Gose.
Gose.
Look, if I was at a bar with a German sitting next to me, and I leaned over and I asked the German, hey, Günther, how do you say Gose? On Guten Tag, I would say Gose. See, that's exactly how I'd say it.
It's it's Gose.
Yeah, but see, that's the name of a river. That's not the name of a beer.
No, but it's Gose though. You know, it's like Rose, Gose.
Said polka.
Oh no, Gose, not polka. Gose.
Oh, well, Gose, just like I said it.
No, Gose.
Boy, I tell you what, we've got to get this right. So, you know, for this episode, we're going to call it Gose.
Well, you're bound to mess me up through this episode, and I'm sure I'll say it wrong.
Maybe we should
just
have
because
more,
of this.
We should have more beer while we're talking about
I think so, but it is Gose, so.
All right, maybe some more polka music.
Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Hello, and welcome to this show of Sips, Suds, and Smokes. Today is a Suds episode where everything good in life is worth discussing. I am one of your hosts today, good old boy Mike. Joining me here at the table is good old boy Chris.
How you doing?
And his lovely wife, Zaya.
Hello.
Today's show is going to be about a discussion with one of the GABF Pro-Am beer competition winners for 2014. Chris was the winner at Boscos Brewpub, and I really congratulations to Chris. I mean, all the way around, this is just really quite amazing, and I look forward to the conversation we're going to have today.
Thank you.
This is a competition that I know very well. A lot of our hosts that have been on the show have participated in the Pro-Am at GABF, and the reason why I'm really looking forward to having you come back on the show is because a year ago we were actually discussing your electric brewing system and just the amazing engineering that you had in such a small space. I mean, this thing is actually in the basement of your condo. I mean, it's just really amazing. I'm really proud to say we were right there just when you were doing your first all-grain brew. And actually got to taste, some of the beer that you had off that system for the very first time. And so it's really great to have you back on the show and to kind of catch up with what you've been doing on your system, because this isn't just one accolade that you have. You really have quite a number of accolades that you've had and your homebrewing experience over the last year. So I'm looking forward to that story, hearing what's been going on with you over the last year on the system as well. First off, have you been having fun?
We've had a great time brewing beer over the past year plus now, and I would say since we've started, we've brewed probably around 18 batches.
Wow.
And of those 18, 4 of them have placed in competitions: Music City Brew Off, National Homebrew Competition, and Bosco's Pro-Am, and the Bluegrass Cup. So
wow,
I'm really happy with the results.
That's
so
just
far.
amazing.
I just want to say one thing to my wife who's home. Yo, Adrian, I did it!
Well, I think that you and Rocky have certainly a lot to cheer about. I mean, that is really those numbers alone, Chris, are just staggering. For you to medal at some national level competitions, with even just the number of beers that you've been working with. I mean, there are some homebrewers that I know they probably brew 3 times the number of beers, probably 35 plus, and just, play a lot of just shoot in all directions, with a lot of the competitions that they go through. So for the fact that just the numbers alone, I mean, that is just really quite amazing. So I know you've brought a lot of beer for us to actually try. So of these 4 that you brought for us to try, first off, why don't you tell everybody what you brought, and we'll talk about them as we're talking about kind of some other things here.
We brought the Octoberfest that we brewed last year that finished second place in the mini best of show for Music City Brew Off. That was kind of an unexpected beer. We didn't really think.
Yep, and in full disclosure, good old boy Mike was a judge in that competition, so I'm really proud to say that that was a really great competition.
So, and the other beers, the Dopplebock was actually a beer that I brewed jointly with John Malone, the Brew Club president, and we both fermented with different yeast strains. I don't think that he's entered in his Doppelbock into any competitions yet, but this was one that we shipped to St. Paul, Minnesota for the NHC first round, and it took second place in the mini best of show for the Bach category. And
also a very stiff homebrew competition as well. I know that you also participated in the NHC that was actually hosted here in Mid-State, Tennessee. And I mean, just phenomenal beers in that competition. I was a beer judge for that as well. And so did you actually enter this same beer in that NHC competition here in the Mid-State as well?
No, actually, when they did the lottery for the National Homebrew Competition, I checked every judging center as a possible option, and I didn't make the first round of acceptance into the competition. So probably like 1 or 2 days later, I got an email from them saying, you're accepted into the competition. You'll have to ship your beers to St. Paul. So
cool. So, and you got 2 more here.
2 other beers. We've got the Gose There, or Gose There.
Yep, we'll have a lot of fun saying that today. That was almost there.
Gose There. And that one was really kind of a funny beer because going back to the National Homebrew Competition, my wife and I, Isaiah, we stewarded for the Nashville competition here, and Zaya was very lucky to be a steward for the specialty category, and she got to try a lot of these crazy beers, and Gose There was one of those beers. After that competition, she said, "We need to brew this. I want this beer. It's great." And we just so happened to be going on vacation, so I brewed it, and it turned out to be one of the most difficult batches of beer that I've ever made.
I like this. So when you guys go on vacation, I mean, some people are like planning what to do, like renting a boat or going hiking or, going on some tour. You guys plan ahead and what kind of beer you're going to take on your vacation.
Yeah, you want a thematically appropriate beverage while you're traveling.
I like that, thematically appropriate beverage. I don't know. I've been to some parts of the Panhandle of Florida, and I'm having a very difficult time thinking what would be thematically correct. Like y'all say that dead deer right over there. I hit that about 2 days ago. That thing is still rotten right over. I'm really trying to think of the thematically correct moment, for the Panhandle.
Smoked venison porter.
Smoked venison porter.
With a little bit of kelp.
I don't think so. So, Chris, I know you've had, quite the adventure over the last year. So kind of help us, step through time just a little bit, because, it was right there when you were actually moving into all grain. What was there certain styles that you kind of went through the year? Were you just kind of moving through seasonal? Were there certain grains? I mean, tell me kind of what's been going on for the last year.
Brewing over the last year has been something where I've kind of looked at the BJCP style guidelines, and
more like a checklist.
Yeah, as a checklist, because I knew going into brewing that I wanted to compete, and now we're competing. And of all the beers that we've brewed, we brewed through the winter, and being on an electric system is pretty clutch for that. And the groundwater, of course, in the wintertime, for chilling, really helps the process, and then you don't spend as much in terms of refrigeration to control your fermentation temperatures and all of that. So I'd say a lot of the different beers that we've brewed have just been no particular order, just what we feel like we want to do next. One beer that we haven't done yet is a stout or porter, and hoping to use some cocoa that we got from was it
I think it was in St. Lucia.
St. Lucia, where we went on vacation. We got these little rods of cocoa, and we're probably going to brew with that and make like a chocolate stout or do something like that this wintertime.
I like this. So not only are you brewing the certain beer that you're looking for while on vacation, you're actually scouting ingredients to brew with.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, were you able to even bring that back in the country? Because they would consider that, basically an agricultural product. So, or it was in your check baggage and you did not declare it correctly.
I think we may have said that we brought back some liquor,
relics from the jungle
and some chocolate, but I don't think we specifically said we brought back raw cocoa.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even they probably sell, cocoa that you could have brought back, even if it had been harvested in packages, probably wouldn't have been a big deal. But still, I mean, I think, the fact that you guys are thinking about beer before you're going on vacation, while you're on vacation, I mean, that's, I can see that this is an integral part of your lives, and how you also mark time, probably as well. So, have there been some beers that, as you were approaching, or even after the fact, I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons, I mean, I'm curious, what you're like, oh crap, that didn't work the way it was supposed to.
Pumpkin.
There's definitely some stories. The pumpkin ale that we brewed, it has 25 pounds of baking pumpkins in it, and I thought the batch was ruined because we weren't able to recirculate through our Herms coil. Because of the runoff was so slow, we had no recirculation. And
so you thought it was going to scorch, basically?
Well, no, I thought the sugars are not going to convert, and where this whole batch is pretty much toast.
Well, I'm glad that you brought this, and so I am not a fan of pumpkin beer. In fact, I'd have to say that I've almost moved to the point of wanting to crawl in a hole for 7 or 8 weeks, because when the Marzahn and the pumpkin beers come out, I'm down to the point I can have like one, and I have to say that my go-to is I'll go pick up Hocker per Shore, and that's it. And that's like the only one I'll have. There'll be like 400 of them in front of me. And I went through a huge taste off, with them 1 year. And I don't know, just there was something about that style, the spices kind of crawling up in my nose, and that, I don't know, I'm not sweet beers is not, I would say, something that my palate, tends to gravitate towards naturally. With all that said, I'm really glad you brought yours, because it does not suck.
It's like pie in a cup.
It is. It is. I think sometimes the one thing that I find with pumpkin beers, particularly, is they are too flavorful, or they're not flavored enough, and there's like nothing in between. And so that real balance between having the sweet element of what you would think of with pumpkin, but not overwhelming the palate, is, really, it's a difficult trick to pull off. And I would say a lot of commercial brewers have not figured it out. But you have. This is the thing that I like smelling this beer probably more than I actually the taste of it is good, but the aroma itself is really quite amazing. It's maybe borderline moving towards having a bit too much flavor, but it's I don't know. It's well balanced, well tempered, well done. This is great beer. I can understand why this metal really well. So, kudos.
Thanks.
All right.
Kind of a pull from Zaya's grandmother's pumpkin pie recipe. So.
Yep, we cannibalized her recipe and put it in beer.
Well, the caramel notes in it are not. The other problem that I find with pumpkin beers is they either have too much burnt sugar, quality around it, or the caramel notes have kind of what I would call turned the curve and moved to the point where they're introducing some bittering element where the sugar has moved beyond where it should. This is pushing the edge, of roasted caramel and actually moving into that, but it's very tempered, great flavor. And again, I love smelling this beer. This is really great. I'll probably just sit here and put my nose in this for the next 5 minutes while you're talking. So, what are some of the other lessons learned that you have? The equipment you saw, that you have has been, I wouldn't say it's a one-size-fits-all brewing rig, right? Because you have a lot of different styles that you've been going after, and I'm sure that has brought along some learning lessons going, that does not work with this style.
Right, and I've really learned what equipment I need to use for certain styles of beer. Occasionally we'll use the Blickman hop rocket, and we also Whirlpool hops too. So there's just different methods for every batch, and like with the Gose There beer, that specific one, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but has acidulated malt in it, which
that's a big word for me.
Yeah. Acidulated malt basically brings in the lactic acid sourness to the beer without having to use lactobacillus. But the nice thing about that beer is that you don't have to wait a year to get the sourness. So but that specific beer, in terms of how we brewed it on that day, it pretty much wrecked my pH and my mash. Even though I had, I mashed for like 60 minutes, and then I added the acidulated malt, and then went for another 45, and my gravity came up low. So I had to add some DME to that. And,
but it was a learning experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm sure that, a lot of people are learning, how to work with that style of beer as well. So as tasting your Octoberfest, as you were chatting there as well, again, not a huge fan of Marsanne in general. I think probably the thing, again, is most of them are too sweet, and it just absolutely wears me out. I'm like, it's like shove two, caramels, in my mouth and then have a beer. It's just absolutely wearing me out on how sweet, a lot of Octoberfest and Marsanne style, have really, become, really being made. This is not the case with yours. And in fact, I mentioned one commercial example that I really tend to go back towards. And the thing that I like about some of the commercial examples that I've gone through is they're probably a bit more on the drier side, and they tend to last a lot better after you open them as well. That's the other thing is I find a lot of the Marsannes at Octoberfest commercial pieces, you open them up and you leave them in the glass in a half hour and they're gone. They've gone from hero to zero so fast. They don't do really well when they get exposed to air, and the sugar basically just overwhelms everything. That's why they end up tasting so sweet. This is, I don't know, there's something almost like a ginger quality that's kind of coming through, and it's presenting itself a lot drier than maybe some of the other ones that I have. And so for me, this is a refreshing rendition of, an Oktoberfest beer. And so this did what, where?
Second place at Music City Brew Off.
Oh, I probably picked this.
You're like, oh, this is a Marsanne I can drink.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the same thing I wrote on the sheet. So
that was our...
Thank you for not making it so sweet. It sucks.
Let's go back and look at our style sheets when we get home.
Yeah.
That was our first medal, and I remember we were cruising out of Puerto Rico, and it was the last time that I had cell service, and I was Facebooking with Juliana and saying, do you have the results?
Oh, yeah.
I'm really wondering. And
I saw her, chatting with several people on her phone, so I didn't realize that was you.
That was on our way to St. Lucia to pick up some cocoa.
Huh. Wow. Truly, beer and story are intertwined with the two of you. That's great. So the Dopplebock that you have here, so it's really great. I knew that... you and John had been collaborating, quite a bit on several different beers, and it's been really great that I think he's enjoyed brewing with you as quite a bit. It's helped him. How did he say it? I think being on an all-electric system is kind of pushed his the way he thinks about the brewing process itself. And he likes the fact that it's not challenging. Is not the word. It's just that he has to think about a very different approach, and the specific effect that you're really going for as well. So the Dopplebock you have here went to NHC, National Homebrewers Competition. Yep. So. Was this the first version or like the third or fourth one that you did?
We've not brewed anything twice.
Oh, wow.
Well, now we have.
We have. We brewed an Oktoberfest again.
Oh, okay. What did you think of the Dopplebock?
Oh, I think it's great. It definitely, once you let it kind of warm up to room temperature or, anything around, 55, 60 degrees or so.
Yeah.
It really... brings a lot more flavor into it. It's a really good beer.
Yeah. So when I think about the reference commercial example is Aventus, Avenius. I've heard it, both ways. Anyway, that is, what I think of as a reference beer, for this. Very close. I would say that, Dopplebock is traditionally sweet, and roasty are two things that I think you would normally say with a great, Dopplebock. But again, I think the mistake is that it's that balance of sweetness that always catches up with people. Either the roast is overwhelming the beer, or the measure of sweetness or sugar that's coming forth, overwhelms it, and so it's the balance between that sweet roasty thing. Is what I think that I'm looking for usually between this. This has good balance. And flavor. It's not just the balance between those two, but there's definitely a earthy, roasty quality, that's catching up with your palate as well. That's really good, and it's probably tasting a bit more complex than I probably tend to think of with most Doppelbocks. Tend to be, I don't want to call it one-dimensional, but I usually don't use the word complex and Doppelbock, in the same, description. But this definitely has a couple, 2 or 3 layers to it that I think is really great, complementing everything really well. So I think you and John definitely, I can understand why this did really well, because it really has just tremendous balance between all those pieces. So, now, did this go to Grand Rapids?
It did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, when do you get the results from that, or are they available?
They are already available.
Yeah, and so,
I think it scored in the low 30s there.
Really?
Yeah, and in St. Paul, it scored a 41, which was not the original score. It was like a 37 or a 38. It
was a 38, and then they adjusted it up to 41.
They adjusted it up to a 41 once they did the best of show judging. So, and I don't know if that was because after it had warmed up, then they had more time to really see the flaws in the other beers. So,
well, I'm glad that's done well. Listen, we're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be right back talking with Chris and Zaya and all about their adventures in brewing over the last year. We'll be right back. Hey, we're back from that break. Thanks for coming back and joining us. We're talking today with Chris Allen and his wife Zaya today about their competition with Homebrew, as well as a recent win that Chris had to go to GABF Pro-Am. So, Chris, I know that going to GABF with a Gose There, you had to work hard at. I had to work hard at learning the pronunciation of the beer alone. So, and we both have been saying, I looked it up. It's Rosea, but you just pronounce it with a G. So it's Gosea for those of you that have been butchering it and calling it 20 other things. That is the proper pronunciation. So, so it's a rather different style on many different levels. This is considered a sour beer, but it's not your typical sour because it's rather salty, like saline water. And that's kind of an unusual component, in a beer. What made you choose this particular style?
Like we had been talking before about the NHC competition here in Nashville, and Zaya stewarding the specialty category. She really, really liked the beer and wanted to have the Gose There as something we could take on vacation and drink. So, I brewed it and didn't really think much about it. We entered a few beers into the Boscos Pro-Am, and the Gose There was one of them. had no clue that it was going to do well. And actually, we're banking on more on our pale ale being selected for the Pro-Am and not the Gose There. So,
that's interesting. So this particular style, the Gose There, has to ring, all these different, tasting bells. I mean, it has to be sour, it has to be tart, it has to be salty, it has to be sweet.
Coriander, lots of coriander.
Yeah, and all this stuff, in perfect harmony. I mean, this is not a beer that I really think of in. This is not amateur hour, to try and make this type of beer. What I mean, when you taste your Gose There, I mean, how do you describe it? Do you think it rings all those bells? And what kind of balance do you think you have with all those?
I really think it does, and we just bottled off the last bit of it yesterday, and even what we were tasting from the keg actually seemed a little bit more sour than this sample here, but I think the balance of this beer is just really spot on perfect. I've tried some other Gose Theres before.
Yeah, so commercial examples. I'm curious what those were and how you thought this kind of stacked up.
We had a couple different commercial examples, a few that we found in Nashville, and then one that we actually found on the vacation that we brewed this beer for. And they kind of ranged from being super sour, but in an acid sort of way, versus in kind of an aged sour way. And I knew that I definitely didn't want to go towards acidic. More towards like a barrel-aged sort of acid if we were going to go super sour at all. So I think it's a lot less sour than some of the commercially available Gose Theres. It's a weird word.
Yeah.
And all the Germans are going to be calling you to correct this, I'm sure. No, it's this. So I think it's less sour than several of the commercially available American versions of the beer. We have not yet had the privilege of going to Germany and trying it from Gose There, which would be great. That would be a fun vacation. So it's less sour. I think it's got a little more. The salt is a little more forward, and so is the coriander. So I think my assessment of the style was that I wanted a beach beer, and it's a really good beach beer. Like, oh, it's hot, it's salty. I'm salty and sticky and sandy, and this is what I wanted to drink.
Well, so this the style itself came up in our boat beer series, and in fact, I really said that if I really had to pick a sour beer that would be a boat beer, I would have picked Westbrook's Gose There. I really felt like that. The fact that it was in a can,
I think that does weird things to sour beers.
I don't know. I think it certainly brings around a distribution, a simplicity of doing that. Plus, you have the ability of taking it, that out in a pool or a beach area.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's a couple of things that I really enjoyed. That particular beer, and that was the reason why I was asking you, Chris, how did you think this kind of stacked up to some commercial examples? Because I think, unfortunately, the Westbrook has imprinted itself as a reference style for me, mainly because that was the first one that I had. And so, I've had probably another dozen, commercial examples since then. In fact, I'm actually staring at one out here, outside the studio, which is a Golden Gate Gose There, which I've not had yet. But I had the Perennial Ales Gose There a couple weeks ago, which was amazing. I mean, so, I think your particular interpretation of the Gose There is it's different. At least this one today is probably a bit more I don't know. There's I'm having difficulty coming up with the right way of describing it. There is it's the mouthfeel. It's almost like a tongue coating, almost like a layer or something that's kind of left on my palate after I have it. So there's that almost trying to think. It's almost like somebody put a salt lick on, and you just kind of lick the salt lick, and you're sitting there almost trying to get it off your tongue, and that is creating other elements in your mouth that's actually coating the rest of your mouth. I'm trying to compliment the beer, and it sounds like that is a horrible way of complimenting what you've done here.
It's like just being in a horse trough with a salt lick.
Oh, wow, that's the first time I've used salt lick and beer in the same sentence, and trying to compliment somebody. That just was a complete failure at all levels. But, this had a certain mouthfeel to it that I thought was very different than some of the Goseas that, I've had. And that's probably the difference, is that kind of coating, element to it. The balance is a little bit salt forward. So, I think, describing a saline quality, component, that seems probably a bit more forward in this particular rendition. One last swig so I can talk about it intelligently. But the rest of, everything is really in great balance. And I think that if whatever you pulled off is a bit more sour, I can see that would probably temper, it being probably a bit more salt forward. So tricky beer. Really tough, for a lot of people to kind of pull it off, on all those, different fronts.
Extreme protein in the hop break. I lost about 2 gallons of this beer in the transfer.
Wow, that is a lot, huh?
So
that would almost be commercially prohibitive to lose that much. I don't know that anybody would tolerate that much loss and transfer. What did you attribute that to?
The filter got clogged.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, the coriander blinded the filter.
Oh, okay.
And the extreme...
Well, there's a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Extreme hot break, too. It was just... it was a mess.
Wow.
But it turned out good.
Huh. Well, so I guess the one thing I thought was interesting was that Boscos, was going to go for a sour in the Pro-Am competition. And
that's not like them at all.
Yeah,
so out of character.
Most of the brew pubs, they don't like any type of souring agent on their systems because it takes forever to get out.
Mm-hmm.
We got to sanitize and scrub and sanitize and scrub, and it's like a triple repeat cleaning system. And even then, you're still, the first beer you're going to make, it's going to be something you're going to say, I might be dumping this, anyway. So I'm curious what conversation you had with Boscos about, actually doing a sour on their system, and are they cool with that? They were like, ooh, let's go for it. We've been looking for an excuse to make this.
I think, too, John Malone was there during the judging, and John and I had some previous discussions about this beer, and he had actually tried it at Craft Brewed, so he really liked it there, and he knew that I had used acidulated malt, which you have a couple of options for brewing this beer, and one is to bring in the acidulated malt in the mash, which does a more kind of natural souring versus adding straight up lactic acid to the boil. So I went the acidulated malt route, and that's how it brought some of that sourness forward, but no souring bacteria at all in this. It actually uses a Kolsch yeast.
And Karen at Boscos had actually said afterwards, because we were really surprised that the Gose won the competition, because it's not something that Karen is normally a fan of soured beers, and it's not something that you normally really want to produce commercially.
Yeah, she told us that at NHC.
Yeah,
she's like,
I'm not looking for a sour beer. So when she tried it, she decided that it was really something that would be different.
And hearing there's no lacto in this.
No lacto.
Isn't that weird?
That is amazing.
It was something, when she tried it, she said that she really liked That it was different than anything else that they had on tap.
I don't know how you pulled that off. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Skills. Skills. And that it was something that she thought would be great as a summer beer to bring in kind of a new flavor palette. So people that may not have liked their Stone IPA or their Flaming Stone or any of their other kind of beers that they have on tap consistently, that this might be something to bring a different palette into drinking more beers at Boscos.
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot that I've learned, in this particular competition. Now, the other ones that, we've talked about here are all stylized competitions. Like the Dopplebock, you're competing with other people with Dopplebocks, or the same thing is true with your Octoberfest. You're doing a stylized competition. The Pro-Am is open season. So it really presents some very unique challenges, I think, both for the brewers as well as the element of judging, around this as well. Even other medals that are done at GABF are done with style guidelines. So the Pro-Am competition is, literally just it is a free-for-all. And, there's almost 120 different beers that end up going to the Pro-Am. And there's a lot of lessons, learned probably over the years. So I know you're going to probably talk with Mark as well as, with John and Kevin, that have been here as well as Danielle, who's going with you from Cool Springs. The thing that we noticed was, there's like a step up in quality that you can really understand with some of the beers that are there. And it was kind of interesting. A lot of the larger breweries that had partnered with, some of the home brewers, you could tell they spent some serious time and money, refining how things would work on their equipment as well as the ingredients itself. And I ended up talking with one of the home brewers, I believe the one that was from Cigar City. I want to say it was a jalapeno brown that he had. Wow. Yeah. And I don't know if it won or not. I think it placed in the top 3 or something like that. And I, had a vague memory of, that conversation where they had gone through a number of renditions, both on his homebrew system as well as on the system at Cigar City before they finally landed on what they were going to end up doing in order to take it to GABF as well. So, I hope that, certainly what you end up doing with Boscos, that you don't think that it's a one shot. I really hope that wherever you wind up with this and whatever you end up shipping, it's something that everybody can, at the end of the day, saying, you know what, I think that's our very best beer that we've ever shipped out of here, because it really does take a lot of trial and error and refinement to do well in that competition. So it's going to be tough. And I don't recall another sour style beer in that competition at all. And
I think the issue there too is that, from the time that the Pro-Am competition or when the homebrewers compete and GABF, there's
almost 6 months.
6 months,
yeah,
which
is really not enough time for lactobacillus or anything else to really refine sourness to a beer. I don't think. You really need a lot more time than that.
Well, I think it'll be a real standout, at that table. And that is the one thing that I really remember with all of the beers that were in that competition is that there was like a huge thing, a huge group in the middle. It was like a experiment in bell curve.
Man.
So there were, things that you could just tell was like, I don't know how you got here. This sucks. Then there was a whole bunch of stuff that was in the middle. It was like, this is good beer. This is not great beer. And then there were a few things that you tasted and you went, that is an awesome beer. That is just like heads and tails above everything else.
Well, stylistically, we'll definitely be an outlier.
Yeah, and I think that that's what it's going to take to stand out in that huge bell curve is, those things that had a lot of flavoring component definitely caught your attention rather quickly. Personally, as as a consumer or a beer judge, however you want to look at it, you can just absolutely smoke me with the best triple you've ever made. Because I think that is one of the easiest beers to screw up. It's a very simple beer to make. It's also incredibly easy to screw up as well. And so having a great brown, having a really great triple, even having, a really great lager. I just sometimes, wonderful simplistic beers, really can do wonders for I think for me personally. But at that table, I will tell you, flavor stands out and definitely capture, will move you to the side of the bell curve where people, it'll capture their attention. They'll go, I never had that before. That's really good. Bring me some more of that goose. Wrong. We'll send you to the back of the line there. Well, it was really great to catch up with you about everything that's been going on over the last year, and as well as get to taste all the beers that you've done really well with. So it was really great to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So what's next for Chris and the Electric Brewing System?
Our goal is to take best of show in all of our beers. So this year was, for the first year of all grain on our system, was kind of let's just brew a bunch of stuff and see how each thing does, and then we'll go back and refine our recipes. The pumpkin ale that you had is something we're not going to be changing. It's a solid pumpkin ale, and I've tried
smells great.
Tried a few different commercial brands, and that's something that is just really special, that sets us apart from other brewers. And I'll continue brewing to style, but we will think outside of the box, and hopefully this year have a rock solid chocolate stout or something that really blows people away.
That sounds great. Well, there were a lot of answers you could have had to that question. I was thinking of a lot of other more innovative or interesting, answers to the question. Well, we're going to double the size of our square footage.
He's already taken up twice the amount of space you saw before.
So I'm thinking, of the barrel room that you're going to have to, buy the condo next door in order to turn it into a barrel, a barreling room for a barreling project, or
giant cold storage.
We have 4 refrigerators and 2 freezers.
Yeah.
So it's already expanded.
Wow. I love this. You're just you're a zoning ordinance, a violation just waiting to happen.
Pretty much.
Don't tell anybody that. Oh,
well, you got a lot of great friends in that neighborhood, and I'm sure some of the restaurants around you that are expanding would love to give up, some of their space and let you brew in house for them. So I'm sure that might be in the offing someday. Well, Chris, thanks for joining us on Sip, Suds, and Smokes once again. Watching over you the past year has been a real privilege.
Thank you.
And your beers that you brought today are just are a good representation of the journey, as a home brewer. And so I really love the story as much as I do the beer, and that's why it's a real privilege, to have you on the show. I hope some other home brewers that are currently going through some of the same, learning curve that you've gone through over the last year are, taking stock of, some of our conversation here today. I'm sure that they'll go, I never really thought about making a Gose There with just pure malt and no lactobacillus. That's a pretty wild move. Anyway. You've managed to beat a lot of other co-hosts that have even been, to GABF, from the show. So, definitely to knock Reverend Mark out. That's pretty amazing, because he is a really good brewer. So,
Thank you.
And I know John has been serving as your mentor, and in many cases you've actually kind of exceeded, some of the ability of what John brought to the table as well. So I think that's really great. That says an awful lot for how far you've come. So
thank you.
Well, I'm sure everyone will revel in your success in the future. I hope the conversation with that we get to have with other competitors going to the 2014 GABF Pro-Am prior to the competition just kind of like we did last year. We actually talked to everybody kind of beforehand, during, kind of after. So that was a good experience. So I'm hoping we get a chance to kind of repeat some of that. Be kind of interesting to get Reverend Mark and Kevin in the conversation here, as the competition kind of grows closer and they actually get to taste some of the beer that you actually ship to GABF. That would be kind of cool.
That would be really fun.
Kind of swing everybody back on the show, and we'll see if we can grab, 2 or 3 other regional competitors, that are going with you to actually taste along. I think that would be kind of a cool experience. So, if we go back to GABF, I don't know if we're going yet, but if we do, I look forward to seeing you there. So,
we're super excited about it.
Well, it's a great event, and I would encourage a lot of people, if they've never been, at least to go once. So, well, it's just really great stuff, everybody. That's going to wrap it up for today's Suds episode. Thanks to all of our listeners here on Sip, Suds, and Smokes. You can catch all of our episodes online on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, Uncle John's Basement, and Spreaker, our native media host. Our terrestrial radio stations are always questioning why in the heck do we broadcast these people, but they seem to be expanding. And if you'd like to hear this show on your favorite radio show, send them a note, a 6-pack of beer, and copy us as well. Just send us the beer. It'll be fun as well. You can reach us online anytime at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every day. @SipSubSmokes is our handle, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. We've actually restylized some of our things on our Facebook page, so we've had a lot of fun with those changes. Do us a favor and take the time to rate this episode if you're listening to us online. That's a big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. I definitely want to thank my co-host today. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Zaya, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you so much.
You guys are an amazing couple, and I'm so glad.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sip, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.